Okay. All right, it's recording. Okay, let me start again. So to, I'm really Persuasion is one of the most exciting parts of this course. As I said, it's the art of getting people to say yes. How do you get someone to say yes? And I mean, you always have had this problem in your life, your parents, with your co-workers, with your co-students, and in the future, you have many times where there's a problem that people have to be convinced about something, and you don't know how to get them to say yes. There are even little books you can buy. There's one book by a Harvard guy from Harvard called Getting to Yes by a guy with the name of Yuri. And Brandon, that's great. I can see your face too. So it's the art of getting people to say yes is one of the most important things. Now, when we talk about persuasion, I think it's a little bit important. When I start off my chapter 2, if you read the chapter on persuasion, I start to make a little bit of a distinction between a couple of things that we want to change in people. And there are normally 3 things you want to change. You want to change people's attitudes, you want to change their opinions, and you want to change their behavior. Just remember it when you do these quizzes too. That is pretty tricky, some of these quizzes, all right? I went through them myself, and I really thought that if I don't tell you about this, you're gonna, with all the textbook and all the PowerPoints, it's not gonna be easy for you. So now, if you change an attitude or you change an opinion and a behavior, that's a little different. These are different emotions, and it requires different actions from you to change them. For example, what's an attitude? An attitude is normally the most difficult to change. Attitudes are strong feelings. It's your feeling. How do you, let's say Victor in Norway, he's in love with some girlfriend in Norway, a Norwegian, but his parents in Germany, they really don't like this girlfriend. All right. So they want to convince Victor he should get out of that relationship, and he should stop loving her. Now you tell me, please tell me, how do you convince someone to stop loving someone? How do you do that? That's an attitude, or that's close to an attitude. How do you stop someone not believing in his religion, in terms of religion, in terms of politics? Racism is an attitude. And I'm not saying you should always change all sorts of attitudes in work, but surely a lot of attitudes are negative attitudes. People are negative towards the company, negative towards lots of things. And sometimes it's really, it causes problems in your company, and then you have to change it. Otherwise, of course, you can leave people, and they can have the right, in most countries in the world, they have the right to believe what they want to believe in. And we have respect for that. Now, but sometimes these can be destructive, and you have to change it. Now, that's the one thing. How do you change an attitude? That's the most difficult part of this chapter. How do you change an attitude, right? The second one is, how do you change an opinion? Opinions are normally not as strong as attitudes. That's just perceptions. It's why I say, you like this or you don't like this. I think the price is no price. You do most of your negotiations is about opinions. It's not very difficult. Most of my techniques in my chapter 2, you can change people's opinions, because it's all about changing price, it's changing perceptions. It's not that deep stuff. And then how do you change behavior? I'm not discussing behavior, because behavior is what we call a catalyst that'll help us change attitudes. All right. Now, okay. If you please, and do yourself a favor, because there will be questions in the quiz for next weekend, and also in the quiz that you in the quiz that you get, the midway quiz that I've set for you on Kahoot. There are questions on how do you change an attitude. Okay, and now it's all based, and please read that the part in the textbook. I'm just thinking where exactly it is, but you're in chapter 4. It's really quite in the beginning of chapter 4. You will read about the one theory that I have in the textbook on how to change attitudes, and I have done my master's degree on attitude change, and I promise you, it's the only theory I included in this textbook of mine, because I believe it's the only one that's really useful and effective, and it's called the theory of cognitive dissonance. And the guy who proposed this theory is a guy with the name of Leon Festinger. Very interesting theory. And Leon Festinger said, you have to create dissonance. If you're not able to create dissonance, people will never change their attitudes. It's almost like I say, you have to create differences. If there are no differences, there's no negotiation. So you have to create dissonance. Now, what is dissonance? Dissonance is something you don't like. There are two feelings you have which is contrary to each other, and it's in conflict, and it causes dissonance. For example, I just bought the car. I don't have enough money for the payments every month. All right? It's two feelings in dissonance. How do you cope with that? It says we don't cope with anything that's out of balance in our lives, in our brains, in our emotions, and our bodies. We try to always create consonance. We create a form of balance so that we can live with ourselves and live with our own attitudes. And therefore, the only way to get that balance is to change your attitude. And that's how you find often that after people have purchased their cars, and a lot of research on that, they've become fanatically positive about their motor cars. So what does it say? It says people had doubts when they purchased the car, all right? And how do they remove the doubts? They can either take the car back. Now, then there's no more doubt, but in this life, you cannot just take a car back. You've signed contracts. You cannot take them back. So you have the car. You cannot get rid of it. So there's only one way you can do that. You have to get new information or something that'll help you cope with the dissonance. That's why you get it that when people buy their cars, they often become very popular, very favorable towards their cars. They protect and they defend the choice they made about the car to everyone. And they even become fanatic about their motor cars. So the only way they can cope with that dissonance is to really like their cars. So the same happens. So the key here is that behavior changes attitudes. There's one little technique in the textbook in chapter 4. It talks about little tricky little, all sorts of little manipulative little techniques you can use. And one is called the puppy dog technique. And there's a question in one of these quizzes on that puppy dog technique. The puppy dog technique says, you give the puppy to the people who's interested in buying a puppy. They say, keep it for a weekend. If you, after a weekend, you want to bring the puppy back, you can bring it back. But now you take the puppy home, the kids play with the puppy, its behavior, they get used to the puppy. They remove all distance. Even if you were against the puppy, you start to justify. So to overcome that dissonance and to get consonance in your life, and you start to like your puppy and you buy the puppy. Take it home for a weekend. Take the car away home for a weekend. All right. In a smaller way, it happens in relationships and stuff like that. Sometimes behavior creates changes in attitudes. I don't want to give you examples, and maybe we can be accused for some blatant examples that I can give you here. All right. Now, so just remember that you're going to get many questions about the consonants. If ever you get a question, there are few questions because it's my favorite. This is my favorite. Cognitive dissonance theory is my favorite theory. So you're going to get 3, 4, 5 questions on cognitive dissonance. If there's ever a question, how do you get people to be more productive or more happy at work? Do you first make them happy and then hope they're going to work harder? By the way, all the research, very few research in this world, believe it or not, can prove any relationship between job satisfaction and productivity. If you try and think you make people happy, they're going to work harder. I've got a bad news for you. It's not working, all right? But the reverse seems to work, which is exactly what Festinger said. If you first give everybody a meaningful full-day job where he feels meaningful and significant, and he's busy for the whole day, they start to like their jobs. So that is much more, that the relationship is much stronger between productivity and satisfaction than between satisfaction and productivity. You're going to get a question on that, all right? And this is, and some of these questions, you know, you have 10 questions, and one of them already is 10% of your grade, of, you know, 10% of the 100 that you're going to get for this. And so it can make a big difference if you understand that principle. You know, my brother was recently in the same problem. He's got a wife who suffers from Alzheimer, and it's a very sad thing. My brother is now, she's now in a special home for Alzheimer's patients, and he had a problem because he wanted to put her in the home for Alzheimer home, but all his kids were totally against this. He says, "How can you do that? You have to look after our mom. How can you take our mom and put her in a home?" And he said, "But I cannot look after her, and she will hurt herself in the house. The house has got steps. She's going to fall down from the steps. She forgets that there are steps in the house." And I say to him, "Look, listen, you come and invite your kids to come and look after your mom themselves, just for a week, and let's see what they do." That's behavior will change attitudes. They were attitudinal against his decision, and then he actually followed my advice. He called them. They actually stay in San Francisco. His son and daughter, they took a flight all the way back to South Africa, where my brother is. They looked after their mother for a week, and then they agreed with him 100%. They said, "Please, you have to put our mother in a home, because you know, that is the only way." So remember this example, because you're going to get lots of this. All right. So cognitive dissonance, it's always a very important theory to remember. Then there are a few other techniques people can use in business where you can use this theory of cognitive dissonance. That's very useful. One is called role reversal. Many managers use it with difficult people they come across in business, and difficult people they manage. You call them into your office, you say, "Let's do role reversal." I know there's many ways you can do this. And you say, "Okay, you become the manager, I become you. All right, I'm going to act like you. I'm going to do exactly what you do. And then you tell me, you will be the manager, and we play this game, and you show me how you do that." And I've tried this many times. I've used it quite a few times in my consultancy and things like that. And I promise you, it's a very powerful technique. If you can do that, if you can really create that situation and say, "Look, we change roles, and you put yourselves in my shoes so that you act as if you're me, and let's see what you do." And then when they have to act that way, they change their attitudes. Then sometimes, if people say, let's do things jointly. For example, people may be against the proposal at work. You say, "Okay, I'll tell you what, join me, please. Let's jointly sit and work on solutions, instead of having a fight, yes or no, and I'm right and you're wrong, and I'm right and you're wrong." I say, "Oh, let's work together, and let's see what alternatives can we do. How can we cope? How can we deal with this jointly?" I often use the smoking example. People, you're a smoker, you want somebody to stop smoking. How can you? It's an attitude, strong attitude. Well, not that you have to change people's attitude to smoking. If they want to smoke, I suppose they can smoke. But sometimes, you know, if you can get them to behave contrary, opposite to their smoking behavior, you can often have success. For example, you have at school, we have a big meeting, and we're going to talk to all the kids about smoking. And we need someone to make a speech on how terrible it is for your health to smoke. And please, Dad, will you come and make a speech? But how can I make a speech? I'm a smoker. I'm smoking. How can I make a speech? So, well, please, just do it, because you're a good speech maker, and the kids will all listen to you. And you can tell them a story about something that maybe you're stopping or something. So then you have to go on the stage, you make a speech about how terrible it is to smoke. And when you walk off the stage, but it's behavior. Then you say, people will come up and say, but how can you make a speech? You smoke yourself. He says, but you have to justify your actions. And that's the process of cognitive dissonance. You have to justify your actions and say, well, I'm really down to 1 a week. And I'm really, in a few months, I'm going to be all over smoking. All right. So very interesting, nice theory, lots of applications. And it's almost the start of my chapter. Please make a point of it of going into that. Then let's move on to the next point. Then I talk about the 6 principles of Bob Cialdini. If you download the PowerPoint, you'll see I've actually changed that the video in the PowerPoint a few times, because there are quite a few videos on Bob Cialdini. He is the Mr. Persuasion of the United States, all right? He's a professor in Arizona. I met him in Stanford when he lectured there many years ago, and I did a course there. I met Bob, and he's a very nice guy, and he wrote many books. His most important book is called Influence, just called Influence. But his whole story, Bob Cialdini's whole story, is that he believes there are 6 basic principles of persuasion that gets people to say yes. And he says, if you know this, you can categorize all sorts of persuasion. You can all categorize them into these 6 groups. And then and that can help you a lot in terms of your understanding of persuasion. So I think it's useful to go through the latest one that I've uploaded, and you can download it and you can look at it. I'll quickly share my screen with you, and we go through Bob Cialdini's principles of persuasion. Let me just see. Wait. Right. Can you see my screen? Can you see it?
Yes.
Can you all see? Please shout. Right. Here I have Bob Cialdini's principle of persuasion. All right. There's got 6 principles, all right, of persuasion. I already spoke about opinions, attitudes, behavior. And then his 6 principles of Bob Cialdini. Right. His first principle is one of reciprocity. He says, in the light of reciprocity, people say yes. All right. What is reciprocity? In other words, if I do something to you, nice to you, you feel obliged to do something nice back to me. So if I can create the situation of doing something nice to you, you would like to, in normal people would normally like to do something nice back. Well, it works in the negative too. If you do something bad to me, people like to reciprocate by doing bad back. But we in negotiation use it in a good sense, and we're trying to create good principles of reciprocity. For example, that's also sometimes called leverage, that you create a kind of leverage. Of course, there are many kinds of leverage, but you create leverage through reciprocity. The word, and there's a question on that, there's a word that we use in reciprocity called, if I, for example, of concession, you hear the word concession many times. Now, concession, why is the word concession such an important word in negotiation? Because the word concession, from now on, please remember that the word concession means a present. If I give you a concession, I give you a present. And if you give me a present, I want to give you a present back. That's why people want to reciprocate on concessions. If you want to buy a motor car from me and I give you a concession, I say, look, if you buy the motor car today, I will, to drop my price by 5,000. You feel, well, maybe I should move up a little bit, from my price, which was, we had a 7,000, 8,000 difference. I kind of feel pressure to move it up. I gave you an example of the negotiation with the labor union, 25%, 5%, the labor union goes down to 17%. It says, but we've dropped down 8%. What are you going to do, management? And management says, well, they feel under pressure to also bring up the bring up their offer of 5% to 6 or 7% in the process. So just remember, it's also very practical in terms of our everyday lives, because every day of our lives, we get people that do very nice things to us. That's why it's important to give people compliments, because people like to reciprocate on a compliment and try and give something back on a compliment. Sometimes people just say the word thank you. Now, if someone says to you, thank you, what do you normally do? What do you do if someone says thank you to you, Victor? What do you say? See, someone says if you did something and someone said, and I say thank you, Victor. Thank you. You did me some favor. All right,
I
send me
would
some
say
stuff from
no
Norway.
problem or happy to help or something.
Yes, you say. People will say it's a pleasure. It's happy to help. I'm happy to help. Or in America, they often use the term, don't mention it. Don't mention it. But Bob Cialdini says it's actually, there is what he calls moments of power in persuasion. And you've missed a moment of power, because remember, if people say thank you, you have done some favor to them. So, and so the best reaction is, it's a pleasure, but I know I did it for you because I know in the same situation or reversed, you would do the same for me. So you create a kind of a bank, a favor bank, they call it. So you can always call in your favor in future. Let me give you a practical example. At work, you want to go and fetch your in-laws at Tampa International Airport, all right? You work for me, I'm the boss. You come to me, you say, boss, can I please go and fetch my in-laws? They're landing in the air on Tampa International Airport, and I would like to go and fetch them. I say, sure, you can go and fetch them. And you say, thank you. I say, no, it's a pleasure. Just go and fetch them. What have I done? I've missed an opportunity. You're going to go and fetch your in-laws. And I did not ask anything back in return for my favor that I gave you. And therefore, I almost created, I've what they call, I have entitled you. If I keep on giving stuff to people without asking something back, you entitle people. You can entitle your kids. Just give. You entitle them, and after a while they think it's their right to get some stuff. So what should I do? If Fatima or anybody says to me, please, can I go and fetch my in-laws in Tampa International Airport? I say, yes, Fatima, it's a pleasure. And she says, thank you, Mani, thank you for that. I should say, but Fatima, I do it. It's a pleasure because I know if I need some time from you, maybe on an odd time when we need some extra work here on a Saturday or an off time, you will do the same for me. And I wait for her to say, yes, of course, Mani. Now I've created a kind of a contract. And now I can always in future go to Fatima and ask her, as Fatima, can you please come and help me Saturday because we have to do stock taking or something and I need some extra hours. I can always ask it because now the favor is in the form of reciprocity and it's the form of a contract almost. So there's a window of power after people said thank you. Or they say thank you, they've given you a concession, you can go and fetch your people at the airport, you can take some time off, but I will know you will always do the same for me in the future. So reciprocity is very powerful. By the way, if people drop their concessions, Bob Cialdini also has some examples of asking people to look after. They just did a research in the streets of Phoenix, Arizona. They went to passers-by in the street. They said to them, will you please look after, so they said, we are from the juvenile detention center. And we're looking for people willing to help these kids in the center. Will you be willing to look after a kid, adopt a kid, and almost adopt them in an abstract sense, adopt them, and then spend 3 hours of your time every week for the next year? And of course, most people said, no, sorry, I don't have 3 hours every week to spend with some kid from the center of juvenile detention center, and then they changed the request. They said first, will you please look 3 hours per week, look after someone from the detention center, some kid. People said no, but then immediately after they said, well, if you can do that, will you please take a few kids just once to the zoo for a couple of hours in future? And everybody said yes. So look, it's just some crazy thing they've created. They've created this big request. They dropped down to a small request, and suddenly the small request was acceptable. Where normally people would have said no, even to the small request. But if you do it in that contrast, it becomes an acceptable request, and people feel they have to reciprocate on that. Remember that example? All right. So even after no, there is power for you. There's a window of power, because if people say no to you, we in negotiation, we're not scared of that. We say, well, if you cannot do that, if you cannot pay my price, and if you say if the price is 15,000, and I say, can I offer you, 12,000? They say no, and we just say, well, if you can do that, what about if I give you 13,000 or something? So we always. That's also why creativity helps you. You always come back, because it does mean that you are willing to make a concession. So there's power after no, power after thank you, power after concessions. And I have one more example here, which, if anybody says it's too expensive, if I go to Robert and I say, and I want to sell Robert stuff. It happens every day when the big people sell to Publix, these big sellers like Procter & Gamble, and they say, this is our price for any product, right, that we sell, and Publix says it's too expensive. What are they really saying? What are they saying when people say it's too expensive? They're actually saying, if we drop the price, I'll buy it. Isn't that what people are saying? It's we've got to listen. What are people really saying to us? So there's another technique I call positive redefinition. So if I say to you anything and you tell me it's too expensive, I say, so in other words, if I drop my price, you will buy it. That's what you're saying. I mean, that's called positive redefinition. Just remember that principle as well. Okay, the next principle that's the one that takes the longest time of Cialdini. Next principle is one of concessions. Well, that is in moments of power, I spoke about that, is a power after thank you, and power after no, and power after yes. So just remember, after people said, yes, I'll take your deal, you could even, there's a moment of power, because you can add small things. If I say, yes, I want the car, I want to buy this car, immediately you'll find in America, they're very good with this. Every place in America you go to, they try and upsell you. They call it upsell. They add little things. They say, what about insurance? What about, we've got this great special deal on audio systems, on whatever systems they can add to the motor car, so as to upsell it and to sell you even more stuff. Because now you've spent $20,000, they sell you something $500, it feels like nothing compared to 20,000. We just add it. They say we'll just add it to your loan. You won't even feel the difference, but it is still a lot of money, but it feels like nothing because it's added on top of 20,000. So there's power after yes too. And then the next principle of Cialdini is called scarcity. He's got 6 principles. Scarcity, if people, for some reason, it's human nature. When things are scarce, people want more of it. You know all about this in this COVID-19 times that we're living. Remember when all the toilet paper were out of stock on all the shelves of all the stores. And now people all ran all over this place to get more toilet paper. After a while, there was just nothing. No soap, no hand soap. There was nothing left on the shelves because it's scarce. And I called up Walmart about something I wanted to buy, and Walmart said to me, there's only one on the shelf. If you come, I will keep it for you until 4 p.m. If you come before 4 p.m., we will still sell it to you. If you wait for longer than 4 p.m., we're going to sell it to someone else. And I promise you, I climbed in my car and I drove there with this full speed to just go and get it because of scarcity. So if you get a question that I'm going to ask you, how will you write an advertisement to sell something? Just remember, you want something to sell something on Craigslist or whatever, please, if you've done this course, use your techniques, use your knowledge, and you have to add scarcity. Is one of the most powerful things to move people. There's only one left. This is the last one. Okay, this is the principle of scarcity. Okay, then we get to commit to authority. Just remember, it's a very important thing. If I ask you, and I talk about a medical doctor, why do you take your medical do your kid to get a brain surgery to a specialist, a super specialist in a brain surgeon? Because he's got authority. Authority is a powerful thing. That's why you study for your MBAs. It gives you authority, and the more authority you have, the more power you will have. The more people will come to you for advice, and the more power you have when you negotiate for improvement of salary, of promotion, and stuff like that. All right. So authority is a very, very powerful thing. Sometimes just that authority alone and the charisma sometimes that goes with it is very powerful. I remember when I was still in South Africa, I was sitting with a group of people, and we're trying to work out some tricky issue that we had with one of the issues on the new constitution of the country. And we could not come to some agreement. And then Mr. Mandela personally walked into the room and he said, how long do you think will it still take you to get to some conclusion or get to a solution and bring us a solution to this problem? And so he said, sir, we will definitely be finished by tonight. And everyone suddenly worked together. And just because of his authority and because of his charisma, everyone started to move towards, finding a solution very quickly. Then commitment. Commitment is also a very powerful principle of Cialdini. He says you have to get people to say yes. For example, if you work a restaurant and you say, please, and someone phone and they say, please, can I have a reservation at the restaurant? And people say, what time you want to come? We're coming at 7 o'clock. Yes, we'll keep it for you. But you have to get a commitment, he says, because often you make these reservations and people still don't turn up. They just stay away. So you keep this table open, but people don't turn up, and restaurants lose a lot of customers because of that. So just building commitment into your question by saying, what is your name? And say, if you cannot make it, will you call me back? And then if you wait for the person to say yes, and if you can use the name of the person, say, Fatima, will you call me back if you cannot make it? Then people will call back if they cannot make it. So get a yes, get people to say yes, physically yes. That is very powerful too. Next one is liking. People say yes to people they like. Liking is a very powerful thing. That's why it's so important that we form great relationships and good climate and make sure that we bond with people before we continue, because for some reason, liking is very powerful. And if you can combine liking with authority, so you don't just have authority, but people also like the medical doctor. Yes, he's got authority, plus you like him. It's even more powerful. All right, and the last one is consensus. It's if everybody does it, we also want to do it. You often hear advertisements that say, especially on these info commercials, people say, please call this number, and please, if it's busy, please call again. So they create the image as everybody is calling to get this product. So if the lines are busy, please call again. And everybody's buying it, and because everybody's buying toilet paper, everybody runs to buy toilet paper. It's this group thing. It's a consensus. Everybody does it. If everybody does it, we all seem to think it's okay. All right, and it's very powerful. Okay, let me get out here and get to the next slide. What's going on? Okay, getting to yes. Okay, just a few extra ones I want to add, and then I'm going to end my story. All right, I don't want to spend too much time. I'm sorry I'm speaking very fast. All right, just a few smaller things about persuasion. The first one is called violation of expectation. In other words, that's why I also place a lot of emphasis on creativity. If you can come with an idea or a response that people don't expect, then they have not prepared any response to that. They have no defense. So if you can violate people's expectations with a nice opposite or something different, it's often very powerful. If you foot in the door principle, if you can just it's actually a very good principle. If you can just open the door a little bit, you can then add and add and add and add. The lowballing technique is what we already spoke about. You come with a lowball offer, 25%. It's powerful not because of anything except the fact that it gives you a bit of power to give concessions. Heat-seeking means that it's the emphasis on questions. Questions are more powerful than statements. I already said that in some other of our meetings. Please ask questions. Questions are more powerful before you respond. All right. Then we talk about the good man, bad man approach. There are a few questions about that. Please just remember about this technique. It's very powerful. It's also discussed in the textbook. In this technique, you never, let's say I want to talk about the price of Coca-Cola. All right, the salesman is sitting there and he says to me, and I'm from Publix, he says, this is the price of Coke. And often in purchasing, people use this technique. Then you have a good buyer and a bad buyer. It's not really bad, but there's a good and a guy that's a little bit more tough to handle. And the good guy always talks first and he says, please, could you maybe give us a little discount on Coke? And the guy says, no, sorry, this is the price. But then the bad man comes in. The bad man never, and please remember, never attacks the Coke seller. He attacks his own man. He attacks his own person. He says, how can you make a deal like that? I mean, we will lose so much money. I mean, this is impossible. We just have to find an alternative, or we have to find some other ways, but we cannot in this market continue this price. And then the guy fights him back. The good guy says, shut up. We've always made deals with Coke, and Coke has always made some concession. Maybe it's not in the price, but maybe it's in transport cost. Maybe it's in the mass discount, the volume discount cost. Maybe it's in the shelf space. Somewhere they always have been able to make discounts, and they will do it again. And they often respond by doing it again. That's a very powerful thing. Me and my wife, we did it many, many times when we buy Persian rugs and stuff. All right. I say, I know it's too expensive. She says, I really like it. And I said, no, I'm not going to buy it. And I start walking away. And then she talks to the guy, says, please just make a concession and my husband will come back. And he makes a concession and she calls me back. And then I walk back and say, yes, what is it now? And she says, please, man, please listen to the guy. He's willing to give us a 25% concession on this. I say, it's still not enough. And I start walking away again. And she calls me and she talks to the guy and he says, no, I'll give you more. So she talks to me and she brings me back. So it's very powerful because he's stuck between two people and he's got to go for the good person and not the bad one. And meanwhile, it's just a technique to get people to drop their prices. The last one here I got is logic. You've all seen in my PowerPoint, there's this Bale's technique of 3 questions and three answers. It follows a little sequence. It's also in a textbook. And the reason why it's effective is because it provides a kind of a logic to people. People like something to be logical. They don't like stuff that does not make any sense to them. Let me just get back and let's just get my, I just want to get back into my, stop sharing. Right, there we are. I'm still happy most of you are still here after my long story, which I'm trying to rush a little bit. I know it's 40 minutes already and I'm trying to get through most of it. Let me just check if there's any more questions that's in some of the quizzes, which perhaps you may come across and you're gonna have problems doing. I wrote them down here. I think what I will also do is, oh yes, there's one technique, 2 techniques that's referred to in the questions. One is called the flinch and one is the nibble. You'll see them both in my textbook. The flinch is a technique where you you act almost as if you didn't hear the price, and you put a new price. The guy says the price of this is 200,000 for this house. You say, what? What do you say? You know, 180,000. I can 160,000. I can never pay 160,000. So you just act as if you didn't hear, and you just flinch. You put a new price on there. He says, no. I said 200. He says, oh, I heard you say 160. That's already too much, you know. So that's a kind of a flinch. Sometimes a flinch is just walking away, acting as if you're going to walk away, which could also be a flinch. But the power of the flinch lies in the fact that you set a new anchor. And a new anchor is established because the guy's price for the house is 200,000. That's his anchor. You try and reset the anchor. So you say, what? 160,000? That's too much for this house. And you try and set a new anchor. I know these are all dirty little tricks, but some of them also have some principles which I'm more interested in. I'm not saying you should use them, but yes, you should definitely know about them because people often use it on you if you don't use it on them. All right. Then the last one there is, I think there's a question on the nibble, which is also in your textbook. The nibble as a little technique, all right, a little manipulative technique. That's already what I discussed when I said it's the foot, similar to the foot in the door technique. So if you can just open the door a little bit and then open a little more. So you add little things, you add things to the top, you add, and then those extra adds does not feel that much. But if you add it in the beginning, it would feel just much more. So those are these techniques that I talk about it. Right, so let me see if I think I have covered virtually all the really tricky questions. There could still be 1 or 2 that I maybe have missed. I think the first quiz on Kahoot is the most difficult one because there are 20 questions and they cover all these areas. Just listen, read through them carefully. What I will do is I will go and change the times on each of these questions so that you have more time to think and to really absorb and to really think of the principles behind it before you answer the question. All right, that should help you too. Right, do you have any questions to me?
Not right now.
Sorry I spoke so fast, but I tried to fit it into 40 minutes. I know it's tough for people to now listen to this. It was tough already for you to listen to me, but now it's going to be even more tough to people that have to listen to my recording. So at least you were here and at least you have taken in maybe a little bit here and there, which is maybe useful. Okay.
Thank you.
I don't want to waste any more of your valuable time on a weekend.
Thank you.
Where you did not expect to attend a meeting like this. But thank you for attending. I really appreciate that. At least I had, a few of you attending, and that I will really make a note of it and remember all your names. All right. So if ever there is, I'm not saying I'm going to give you any special favors, but I'm just appreciated that you are all here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And now it's a big pleasure for me because I know if I ask you a favor, you'll do the same for me. So that's great. Thank you. Okay, have a great day. You go well, eh? Thanks.